All right, let's get right into this. In today's explainer, we're diving into a seriously fascinating investigation. Just imagine, for a second, a text written 6 whole centuries ago, a deeply intricate coded blueprint that claims to map out the exact end of democratic India and a massive shift in global power. And we aren't talking about vague, open-to-interpretation historical guesses here. We're looking at a highly specific 600-year-old scriptural prophecy that actually names names, pinpoints dates, and describes geopolitical alliances that look strikingly like our modern world. It is a wild ride, so grab your focus because we're going to break down these ancient predictions step by step.
Okay, what's truly mind-blowing here is the sheer specificity. The ancient Bhavishya Malika explicitly names India's final democratic leader. It literally declares that a person named Narendra, a yogi or ascetic who practices yoga, will become the Prime Minister of India. And actually, not just any Prime Minister. The text makes it incredibly clear that he will be the absolute last Prime Minister of the Kali Yuga. For context, that's the current age of darkness and strife in Sanatan Dharma. The Malika records this with just staggering precision, perfectly setting the stage for what it describes as a massive transition in human history. Now, to really grasp the weight of these texts, we've got to appreciate the immense dedication it takes to decode them today. We have to talk about Pundit Dr. Sri Kashinath Mishra. He's a highly renowned religious scholar of the Jagannath Sanskriti and the Bhavishya Malika Purana. For over 2 decades, he has completely devoted his life to translating and sharing these exact scriptural prophecies, taking them from Odia into languages like Hindi and English so a global audience can understand them. And it's absolutely crucial to note here, these teachings are not his personal invention. They are incredibly authentic, ancient scriptural text that he has meticulously researched and preserved. And what started as localized dedication has rapidly snowballed into a global mission. These Bhavishya Malika teachings have been researched, preserved, and propagated all over India and internationally by Pundit Dr. Sri Kashinath Mishra, alongside the Biswa Sanatan Dharma Seva Trust, which operates directly under his guidance. They are super strict about ensuring the authentic teachings of the Malika are shared exactly as they were written. They firmly resist any personal interpretations or people trying to write them off as mere folklore. Honestly, their rigorous work provides the entire foundation for the evidence we're exploring in this explainer. So, what exactly is the Bhavishya Malika? Well, it's a 600-year-old collection made up of over 100 prophetic scriptures. These were written by the Panchasakhas, who were 5 great seers from Odisha. You can basically think of the Malika as this incredibly intricate, coded scriptural blueprint for the end of our current age. It spells out in intense detail the catastrophic transition from Kali Yuga, that age of vice we mentioned, into Satya Yuga, which is a prophesied age of absolute truth. The scriptures document everything from massive political shifts to literal geographical changes, laying out exactly how this whole transition is supposed to unfold. So the really crucial point here is how this ancient text intersects with our current calendar today. According to the Bhavishya Malika, the 2024 Lok Sabha election is prophesied to be the absolute last general election in Indian history. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. The text describes a timeline where the democratic system simply ceases to function as we know it right after this point. The whole era of political campaigns, voting booths, and elected prime ministers, the scriptures say it all comes to a definitive, permanent halt. Let's actually map this out, because the pacing described in the Malika is pretty breathtaking. According to the text, 2024 marks that final democratic election. Then, the incredibly tight window between 2025 and 2028 brings severe global war and a complete collapse of modern technology. By 2027, which mathematically aligns with the 13th year of this final leader's tenure, military rule takes over. And finally, by 2032, a new utopian era called Ramrajya is established. The Malika is describing a rapidly approaching, heavily compressed timeline of global destruction followed by rebirth. Now check out this startling quote from the scriptures. The Bhavishya Malika reveals that during this final prime minister's rule, who, again, is explicitly referred to as a yogi, military rule will be imposed. The text specifically outlines that around the 13th year of this leader's tenure, a severe emergency will arise. The democratic constitution will be suspended, and the nation will transition directly into emergency military rule. But here's the interesting part. The scriptures frame this not as a political failing, but as an inevitable, divinely ordained step in the transition between these 2 grand eras. And this naturally brings us to the global stage. The geopolitical collapse described in the Malika is terrifyingly specific. The text records that a coalition of 13 Muslim nations alongside China will attack India. This localized conflict is then prophesied to rapidly ignite into a fierce world war involving nuclear weapons. However, the scriptures also very clearly outline the alliances, stating that Russia, France, Germany, and Japan will step in to ally with India. And if that wasn't enough, simultaneously, the Malika describes massive geographical shifts. We're talking mountains turning into rivers, devastating earthquakes, and literally a shift in the Earth's axis. Amidst all this absolute chaos, the Bhavishya Malika describes two massive interventions. First, between 2025 and 2028, there will be a total unrecoverable failure of all modern digital technology, electronics, and communications. Literally everything we rely on today will just stop functioning. Second, and perhaps even more importantly, the Malika explicitly describes divine intervention by Lord Kalki. The scriptures declare that Lord Kalki will personally intervene to prevent nuclear strikes from actually landing on India, neutralizing the absolute most devastating weapons of this apocalyptic war. Which brings us to a massive structural shift predicted by the Malika. On one hand, you have the failing modern system: democracy, prime ministers, voting, regional politics, the whole shebang. The Bhavishya Malika states that this system is inherently flawed for the coming age. On the other hand, you have its prophesied replacement: a centralized divine monarchy. Lord Kalki won't just be a spiritual figurehead here. The text specifically records that he will become the actual king of the entire world, replacing all our fragmented governments with a single, unified, divine rule. So, you might be wondering, where exactly does this new world order operate from? Well, according to the Bhavishya Malika, the capital of this new global governance won't be Washington, it won't be London, or even New Delhi. The Malika records the establishment of a single global constitution administered directly from the sacred land of Jajpur in Odisha, India. The text explains that the entire world will essentially be reorganized into states under a central rule radiating outward from this holy city. It's a complete top-to-bottom geographical and spiritual realignment of power. Now think about this highly specific number from the texts, 100,000. According to the Bhavishya Malika, Lord Kalki is not going to administer the entire globe single-handedly. The scriptures state that he will summon and anoint 100,000 extremely devoted followers who have practiced severe penance. These individuals will actually be crowned as administrators and rulers over small regions all across the globe. They'll be tasked with enlightened governance, making sure the principles of this new age are perfectly maintained in absolutely every corner of the world. But look, the prophecy doesn't just end with doom and destruction. It actually culminates in an ultimate promise. By the year 2032, the period of destruction officially concludes and the rebirth begins. The Bhavishya Malika describes this as the establishment of Ramrajya, which translates to the ideal utopian kingdom. So after years of brutal war, geographical upheaval, and the total collapse of our old systems, 2032 is said to mark the solidification of a new era of global unity, endless happiness, and a divine rule that the scriptures say will last for over 1,000 years. And this new civilization won't just be politically different. It's going to be fundamentally different in its everyday human interactions. The Bhavishya Malika states that this new era will rest on 5 foundational pillars: Satya, or truth; Shanti, peace; Daya, compassion; Kshama, forgiveness; and Maitri, friendship. The prophecy promises an era entirely free of civil war and conflict. It describes a society deeply rooted in radical forgiveness, where even those who make mistakes unknowingly are forgiven rather than punished, purely so their conscience can awaken. Naturally, the texts don't just predict the doom and the rebirth, they actually provide a clear blueprint for how to navigate it all. According to the Bhavishya Malika, there are very specific spiritual steps required to survive this transition. The scriptures prescribe 3 primary actions. First, performing Trisandhya, which means doing prayers at 3 specific junctures of the day. Second, deeply reading and studying the Bhagavat Mahapuran. And third, incessantly chanting the Mad of Nam, the holy names of the Lord. The Malika flat out declares that those who hold tight to these practices will be preserved as the seeds for the new Satya Yuga. As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a profound question to chew on. How do you view this intersection? I mean, we have a 600-year-old text explicitly naming a modern leader, predicting the end of democratic voting, forecasting global nuclear alliances, and describing a total technological collapse. The staggering specificity of the Bhavishya Malika, which has been preserved so meticulously by scholars like Pundit Dr. Kashinath Mishra, really forces us to look closely at the backdrop of today's geopolitical reality. Whether you view this as a literal divine roadmap or just a highly fascinating historical anomaly, the parallels are undeniably captivating.
Keep analyzing, keep learning, and I'll see you in the next explainer.